Hello, everyone. My name is Padmini Nidumolu, and I'm the co-founder of Lean and Agile for Women, an organization and initiative to bring the stories of women, journeys of women in lean and agile spaces. And this is an effort to celebrate women and the journeys that we have all gone through. And the basic pillars of Lean and Agile are spirals, groups of women coming together to learn from each other through micro requests. Lean and Agile 100, which is also called LIA100, celebrating the journeys of 100 phenomenal women. And the LIA Next Generation, bringing in next generation into the growth mindset, and conference and organizational partnership as the fourth pillar. So it's my pleasure to bring this LIA100 interviews here. This is a YouTube channel. You can subscribe to it. And all the interviews that we are doing will be part of this series. And today, I'm super thrilled. I'm really excited to bring in, and in fact, to introduce you to a very enthusiastic and a genuine leader of our community. She's an expert in coaching, training, and facilitation. She's a member of the directors of Agile Alliance, and she's known for her volunteerism in both local and national Agile communities. She's a co-author of Agile Practice Guide, which is a collaborative project between Project Management Institute and Agile Alliance to help ease the transition from traditional project management to Agile. She's a professional Scrum trainer. She's also a co-organizer of Tampa Bay Agile. Please join me in welcoming Becky Hartman. Hi, Becky. Welcome to LIA100.
Hi, nice to meet you and to work with you. I've enjoyed conversing with you, so happy to do the interview.
Awesome. And I bet you're very busy arranging for the upcoming Agile 2019, right? It's about 2 months away.
Yeah, we're all excited about it, but I'm happy to say that the board doesn't do the organizing. We just get updates and watch all the social media activity around it, but the board doesn't do the organizing of the conference, but we do attend and reach out to our community so we can hear from everyone, all the voices.
Right. Yeah, and that's awesome. It's happening in my city, Washington, D.C. So, I'm pretty sure I'll see you there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really looking forward to that. Awesome. So I'll dive into my first question here.
Okay.
You've been involved as a board member. You've been a co-organizer of volunteers in Agile Alliance, and you're a co-organizer of Tampa Bay Agile. So you're exposed to conferences and local meetups and whatnot.
Yeah.
I want to pick your thoughts on some of the patterns in diversity in both gender and thought leadership that you see in general in your experience while you work with these conferences and communities.
Okay. I will say that as I was thinking about what you were saying, it used to be, so before I came into the Agile community for volunteering, I spent several years as a PMI volunteer. As soon as I got my certification, I started volunteering and ascended to the board rather quickly and did several roles on the board. And what I noticed at that time was that there were more women volunteers than men. And women, we tend to raise our hands pretty quickly for things to volunteer, whether it's at work or of our own accord.
Sure.
But in the time that we've been shifting and diversity has come more to the fore, it's very interesting for me to realize that in a volunteer role, I've seen more men get involved. So that's become more balanced, at least in the areas I've been in.
Right.
As we're looking to weigh out the balance of gender diversity in work and paid scenarios, I've seen a little bit of a shift in the other direction, at least in my time at PMI and locally. But the Agile community itself is full of volunteers, both women. So it's not I think it's in our nature in the Agile
Yes.
community, but it's not a hard push to, oh, let's get more women involved or even to get more men involved. It's, oh my gosh, we have so many people who want to get involved.
Yeah. Happy problem.
We balance the group that comes together, right? That's more the focus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about being very intentional as a woman about where I volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not feeling that I have to say, because by my nature, I'm a people pleaser. So at work, when there's something to be done, it's a very conscious choice over the last many years when I choose not to be the one who volunteers so that somebody else steps up or takes their turn. And I take my turn, but I would raise my hand all the time. I had to learn to keep my hand down so that I wasn't always putting myself in a compromised position. I was picking and choosing what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and you said it right. I think how the diversity in not just volunteers, but I think the speakers and contributors is absolutely on the rise, which is
Absolutely.
it's a very positive trend to see.
Yeah.
And that takes me to the next question, I guess. And again, based on everything that you've seen, right?
Yeah.
And your involvement, what do you think should be the focus, or what elements should the conference organizers consider in order to have thought leadership coming in more, and also make it more effective and value add to the community? Not just another set of speakers coming in, but what should they be intentional about?
Yeah. So my experience with the conference is more on the volunteer side. So just to make sure everyone who's listening knows, right? I've not organized, been a program chair or part of the steering committee for the Agile conferences. And of course, the big conferences are yearly. So this year it'll be Agile 2019. I've always been what we call a purple shirt. And I don't know if we can tell, but I'm wearing a purple shirt now.
Yeah.
But from the focus and what I've learned from the fantastic program chairs we have had, and in my time of being a volunteer and being part of the board of directors, we have seen equally as many men as women step up and be program chairs and take their turn kind of in the hot seat. And every program chair, from my experience, brings their own unique look at it, and they have opportunity to make some changes every year and influence. And I believe every program chair I've known since I've been a part of it has always been very open to bringing information and looking at diversity and changing their experiences about what diversity is. So I think that they're always looking at it, and they're always hearing voices from the community. Some voices are louder, some voices are,
Sure.
I'll just leave it at louder. But there's always a swell of voices that help lead the direction, what energy in the community. So I think it's important that we do consider that, and we continue to engage with our members and people in the community who have input to say, because I think those are the topics and the influence and the diversity are what people are looking for. So if they're making their voices heard, and we hear a lot of it in the community and we gain input, it helps us to look at what could we want to do? What could we want to influence? Certainly the submissions, they get all kinds of submissions, and a crazy amount, maybe, I don't know, it's maybe not 10 times. I don't know how many submissions there were this year, but way more than they can handle. So they're looking for a balance in all kinds of different ways. And I don't know the formula that they look for, but I do know from a volunteer standpoint, the co-organizers try to balance diversity in all kinds of ways when we bring people into the conference, right? You look for male, female, you look for balance there, you look for balance in what company, We don't want a bunch of people from one company,
Sure.
one state, or one country. So we're looking in all aspects, and we blend 50% returning volunteers with 50% new. So for us,
That's awesome.
get the balance from, it's kind of like a Rubik's Cube. You turn it, look at it.
Right, right.
And it's the result of many organizers before us helping to create the framework for it and passing it forward, and each organizer can help to improve and bring in new things, do experiments, if you will, every year, like how does this make it better, and then they pass it on to the next and people morph it. So I'm absolutely confident, knowing the program chairs that I know and the different speakers that have been there, that that is the same thing.
Awesome.
Do
Okay.
it this way because we've always done it that way, but we take into account lessons that have been learned and shared by others.
Right.
And historical background. So there's a lot of passing on of information and networking of information throughout the board and the program chairs, and how they partner and how people come through the organization as volunteers. So I think that there's a balance, and recognizing that sometimes no matter how hard we try, we don't get it right for 100% of the people.
Yeah.
And everybody takes input and moves on. But yeah, we all work really, really hard at it. And I know I've never been, like I said, I've never been a program chair or a reviewer, but I know many of the folks, and I know how hard they work to try to get it right and bring the topics. So yeah.
No, that's fantastic. So you're also a coach and a trainer, and you work with several teams in the organizations and several organizations as well.
Yeah.
So based on your experience, Becky, what are some of the most challenging barriers that you have seen in your experience? And so this question is twofold. What are some of the most challenging barriers, and what kind of mindset or superpowers did you adopt to break those barriers?
Yeah. So the biggest barrier is always because human.
Yes.
That's my favorite hashtag. I teach it to all my classes. Because, darn it, all of this stuff would work, building software and iterating through new projects. If it just wasn't us humans, it would be, right?
Yes.
Because we're what bring the flavor and the knowledge and the diversity in all kinds of ways, including our reactions to change and safety. So always the biggest barrier, there's a saying, it's always a human problem. It's always a people problem. It is in a lot of ways. It's not just temper or temperament, but it's everybody brings all of their past experience with them. So everybody has a different filter, right?
Yeah.
This in collaboration and communication. And to me, that's always the biggest issue. Like, communication is always the number one issue, and it happens in a multitude of ways, only partly of which is verbal, send and receive. And did we understand each other? Because I can say the color blue, I can say blue in the middle of a room. Everybody think about the color blue. Mm-hmm. We've all thought of a different color blue because we have influences and things we like in our filters.
Yeah.
Making sure we all understand the same color blue means that we have to communicate in a multitude of ways to get there, whether it's showing a picture, or picking a blue together, whatever those things may be. It's a color, but it's take us time. So I think those are the barriers, right? And of course, there's all the barriers everyone's familiar with. How will an organization handle change? How will their leadership look at it? Do they consider it's a me change too scenario, or it's just those teams over there? And how does it influence the rest of the organization? How far are we willing to go? What are our barriers? What are our constraints? And then the other challenge is me as a coach. What am I triggered by? Am I being responsible for my reactions? So am I coaching from the right place with the right stance and the right intention at the time? And no one is perfect. So we're always kind of overcoming the barrier of our stuff and our reaction. And how can we be, and it sounds trite to say it, but how can we be more agile? How can we adapt even in the most constraining of situations? So you have your reaction, and then how do you move on? or do you just,
Right.
no, I can't do it, right? And
Right.
like you're working and you're helping them, and the goal is to help them, and you have to keep moving on. So for
Yeah.
me, those are the biggest barriers.
Yeah.
Because all the other things I think are known, right? Do they understand the technology? Do they have the capability?
Right.
Will the teams engage? To me, that's like, we all know those are the things. So to me, I like to look at the larger thing of the human factor in it and my factor as a human in it.
Absolutely. I think that's very profound, what you mentioned, Becky. And, you probably have observed and worked towards, and this is my assumption, because, to build better teams, high performing teams, you're looking at some sort of gender balance on the teams. So, in your perspective, is it important? And if it's important, how can that be achieved?
Yes, I think it's important, but I don't look at it necessarily as a 50-50 scenario. And part of that, so there are a couple of reasons. It's hard to be 50-50
Sure.
because there are less women in tech than we'd love to see. I certainly see plenty of women in my company. And some of the clients that I work with, I'm very inspired by their gender diversity, how many women I see shoulder to shoulder with their counterparts as men, or even strong female teams, and different kinds of diversity from different countries and backgrounds and filters and religions, and they're all there and they're all working together. I find that very inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think the diversity is, do you have allies in teams? So
Right.
if you have fewer women in a company or an organization or a client, it's not, do I put all the women in one team or do I split them up? It's like, how do our personalities work and where are my allies that foster the diversity of thought? So even if I work with teams that sadly don't have gender balance and maybe even no gender differentiation, how are we balancing diversity of thought? And sometimes I get to bring that in from my perspective if they're asking me for coaching. I do think it's a huge issue for discussion, and I think it's a difficult topic where lots of people have knee-jerk reactions. Well, you don't want to put the wrong person in there.
Yeah.
Just say it needs to be 50-50. And I think every situation is different. I think the key to it is people's intention to look at it for what it is. And, if we're all aware that we have unconscious bias, we're less biased.
Yes.
So I think
I like
that's
that.
super important, and
Yes.
encouraging that. And I know there's a lot of talk in the world and laws that have been passed in some countries that boards of directors now have to be a certain percentage. I don't know if it's 30 or 50 or exactly what it is. I think it can only help to improve in some ways. I hate that we have to force it,
Yeah.
to mandate it by law.
Right.
Because when we see women in leadership, I want them to be there because they're the right person
Yes.
for that organization at that time. Because otherwise we run the risk equally of damaging the organization if we're putting someone in a position as a token to make sure we've met
The diversity. I absolutely agree with you because, you bring up a great point. It shouldn't be a mandate. It should be, intentional, and it should be a value add, and you're employing or, allocating that person because they deserve to be there.
But
Not
likewise, I also understand that the balance of power is not always willing to give that up. People are uncomfortable with all kinds of change, and the loss of the opportunity to make things better in favor of keeping it the same way because I'm safe and secure. Man, that's an eternal struggle. And
Yeah.
I don't want to make anybody wrong in it, but never giving the opportunity to me is
Not an option. Yeah.
unimaginable, really.
Yeah. No, definitely. I'm going to take a detour here and go back to, the practice guide, the Agile practice guide that you have authored. And that was basically to ease, the transition between the traditional, project management into
Yep.
Agile way of working.
Yep.
When you co-authored, in fact, when you embarked on that, thought that you want to co-author, what were some of your apprehensions? And all of us have a first time, and all of us are apprehensive, and more so women, because we have more responsibilities at home or outside. And how did you kind of break that internal barrier and said, I'm going to do it?
Yeah. So at first, my consideration was around, I came from the PMI community, but there's a faction in the Agile community that, PMI may not do it well or right, and that they're rigid. The pendulum swings, right? I started in PMI, I came to Agile, and it takes time to settle into the middle and to learn. And I've always maintained my PMP and my my ACP. They're important to me. There were things I worked really hard at, and certainly credentials help when you're interviewing and looking for a position. So I kept them, and I always kept them up to date. But I moved away from the community more, and in a way, arrogantly thinking that being Agile made me somehow better. And so when the practice guide came up, it was a paused moment, but it was definitely something I wanted to, bring my knowledge to those folks in PMI and show them there's a better way. But I was also apprehensive because I was scared to death what the Agile community would have to say about it. And I do remember when the partnership was announced at the member meeting at the Agile conference, there were audible gasps in the room, and people were saying, negative things. And even some of my friends who were there were joking about it. And I did not volunteer at that point that I was going to be one of those co-authors. And I did get support from the community. And I learned a lot about being more humble, I guess, or there is a bridge to be built.
Yes.
It's an important piece of work, and people may not agree with everything we've said, but we embrace all. And if we want, put your money where your mouth is. You want to help people grow and learn.
Right.
Who better than the people you want, really literally have said you want to be the least like, right? They don't want the command and control project management. People are saying they want to understand. PMI is reaching out to the community and saying, we want to help our practitioners grow in this space. And, there are places that we know having a checklist makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a fine balance, and no methodology or framework is bad per se. It is where
how
to
you use
what
it
and when. So I definitely strongly believe, and I have a PMP myself. I'm still maintaining it, so I know what you're saying.
Well,
awesome.
And I was so fortunate. The co-authors that I worked with and our contacts at PMI are wonderful. And
that's great.
Got a chance to work with people I never would have gotten a chance to work with, and to learn. Not that I think that I know everything. I struggle with the word expert, but man, did they broaden my view. And I had some really tough moments in writing this, where I had good mentoring from my co-authors who took rough situations for me. I won't call them bad, rough situations for me in ways that I was viewing things, and absolutely turned them on their head and said, try this out. And so it really helped me in a lot of ways, and building the bridge in that way became even more important to me.
Yeah, and this is a very, very valuable bridge that you have attempted to do, and I really hope more people can leverage that.
I hope so too. And it's free to all PMI and Agile Alliance members to download in PDF format. So it's available to the community.
Okay, that's good to know. I think that's a great piece of information. I wanted to touch on probably the last question here, Becky, but it could be the most profound one.
Uh-oh.
What are some of the pivotal moments, personally or professionally, right, which kind of, shaped the way you think? Some of the vulnerable moments that you went through, and what really, was your thought process as you kind of, survived and thrived?
Yeah. So for me, as I think about some really pivotal moments in my life that I think apply to what I do as a coach and how I look at it, um, when my girls were younger, I homeschooled them for a few years. They were really little then, they're all adults now. But the shift in perception of what that's like and how every moment is learning and lessons, and especially with kids, right? We
Yeah.
hear they're like sponges, but they are. And even a trip to the grocery store, potential for so many skills and so much learning. So that really changed the way I looked at education, but also the way that I learned. And I think that's fed a lot into my passion for helping others learn, training in the way that I train. Training from the back of the room is, something that I'm certified to train, but also the way scrum.org handles their training and the way they look at that. They employ a lot of the techniques, experience, and then debrief. So we have a lot of that interactive stuff. So I think that all led to that direction. And also, I struggle with these words because I don't want to be negative, but I'm working through, let's say, or healing some autoimmune disease. And I'm in the midst of, just this week, I learned all new stuff about different food sensitivities I have and ways I'm going to manage it. And I'm learning about my genetics and genetic markers so that I can, it's as my doctor would say, it's a puzzle, and there are pieces to the puzzle. And it's not only about what's physically going on with you, but what you've experienced in life, how you process it, what toxic thoughts that you have. And that leads a lot into coaching, because as I said before, there's my reaction and my interaction. Somebody says something, I have a reaction, but how I react is about me.
Right.
I've got to learn how to handle that better in terms of my coaching in the community, but also with how I care for myself. And that's a big message as I look at self-care, and coaches give so much.
Yeah.
It's breakneck speed, whether you're in an organization or a consultant, and how are you caring for yourself?
Yeah.
And we've seen it a lot. We've had a couple of really key losses over the last couple of years in our community.
Yeah.
Jean Tabaka
is
a big one for our community, and she is a powerhouse of a woman, and she influenced all of us, whether we know it or not.
Right.
And, she was a road warrior, and, I don't know how well she took care of herself. I'm not making any judgment on that, but we all certainly paused and thought, how are we caring for ourselves?
Right.
So I think that that's important. And I carry those things forward. And then the other thing that I will say, most women, and actually many people I meet nowadays, have some form of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I agree.
My imposter is always with me. And, as I look at Agile coaching, I look at that, and that, we're all hypocrites. So I really try to weigh out, and I'm probably very careful, and though not obviously reserved, like I'm extroverted, but I'm reserved sometimes in things that I do or opportunities that I take, because I don't want to feel hypocritical. So if I struggle with something, I have a really hard time sometimes, or I'm very careful in the way I position my advice or my coaching or what I might offer to someone else, because I don't want to walk away feeling like I'm the worst hypocrite in the world, right? We all have things we're not good at, and I want to help people be better in ways that I can. And I'm hoping in helping them, I'm taking my own advice. So I really try to be intentional there. And nobody's perfect. We all miss the mark.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ongoing pivotal things for me. And I try to take a moment and pause, right? We don't, to celebrate wins.
Yes.
To reflect on moments that I think are important to me and where I'm growing. And then can I help somebody else grow because I've grown through that?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, personal
Yeah.
journey because, what you just did is just commendable, Becky. You just shared the most vulnerable, space, of your life, and that's what makes you strong. Because you need a strong woman to kind of say that. So thank you so much. Really
Oh,
appreciate that.
you're welcome.
And
I just wanted to add that, last year at the conference, we looked at diversity and inclusion, and I told my story in a group where we were talking
wow,
different ways to look at diversity and inclusion.
right.
And I think that's key, just because when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we don't always think beyond the bounds
Yes.
of gender and race
General.
and religion. And certainly, diversity and inclusion is much broader than that,
Absolutely.
can
Yeah.
be. But our world has, and necessarily so, been very focused on the gender and diversity, primarily around
Right.
diversity inclusion, rather, around gender and race and religion.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important. But I think we also need to remember, there's that meme that always circles Facebook, right? About you have no idea about the battles people are facing.
Yeah.
Be kind.
Yeah.
Easy to forget, but I try to remember that pretty regularly, because
Yeah.
what I face, even in just traveling for a couple of days, I'm sure there are things that people face that they keep to themselves, that they could just use some recognition of, that there's a lot of silent folks out there dealing with their own things, that they
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
space to be okay about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's time to be empathetic. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you wrapped it up with that message, right? Be empathetic, and also, it's okay to kind of express and
Yep.
share, what your limitations are, not feeling that they're your weaknesses, but enough
Yep.
strength is needed to say that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is great, and it was such a heartening talk with you, Becky. Thank you so much for sharing
Thank
all
you.
your experiences and perspectives. And we are so honored to have you as part of LIA100. This is what this is all about.
Yeah, no,
Celebrating the journeys.
I'm very honored to be included. It's quite a list of people, so
Yeah,
if I
yeah,
stack up.
yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
we look forward to talking to you soon on this platform. Thank you so much, Becky.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.